fact is, though, that for starters, they did not have a competent campaign plan. They attacked in 5 or 6 different locations. Their logistics proved absolutely abysmal. The level of training of their soldiers and their junior leaders is clearly inadequate. Their communication systems have broken down, so general officers have to go up to the front, get out of their vehicles to find out what's going on, and they get shot by snipers. Just the sheer readiness of the force has proved to be very substandard. It's not obvious to me what they were doing during those months of maneuvers in Russia and in Belarus on Ukraine's border. Remember, they were out there for many, many months, supposedly training. Just across the board, they have underachieved in virtually every conceivable area, with the possible exception of just the ability to carry out destructive, often indiscriminate attacks by missiles, rockets, bombs, and artillery and mortars.
Does this surprise you?
Remember that we heard a great deal about the modernization of the Russian military. A lot was made of their advanced weaponry. It was put on display every year in the annual Victory Day celebration for World War II. And yet what it appears is that a lot of this was just, in a sense, Potemkin capabilities. They sort of look good from a distance. They have a bit of each of these, but they don't have them deployed throughout their forces. So the very sophisticated command control communication systems about which we had been told previously, it turns out, are not deployed with their forces. They're using, in fact, single channel, open, non-secure HF radio communications, which any Ukrainian citizen who has a police scanner can locate, can record and upload, especially when they're criticizing their commanding officers, which is a preoccupation of many of the Russian soldiers, it appears, and perhaps with good reason. And then, of course, they just jam it. And so that's why, again, the Russian leaders have to keep coming up to the front, exposing themselves and getting taken out by Ukrainian snipers. I think it is a legitimate concern. Again, I tend to think, and I think the general consensus is that it is unlikely that he will use nuclear or chemical weapons, for that matter, because crossing those thresholds would be so significant. Yes, the West has taken enormous steps to sanction the Russian economy, the financial system, Putin's inner circle, and then the business community writ large has taken enormous actions. Over 750 companies have either stopped what they're doing in Russia or reduced their activities there. Some of them are not going back. So all of this has done enormous damage to Russia. And of course, Putin has to be keenly aware that way over 300,000 of his own citizens, some of the best and brightest of Russia, have just finally left the country. They just cannot abide living in a country that has become the international pariah. What is happening, and this is pretty publicly known, is that everyone is trying to figure out through intelligence sources and methods, what are the Russians likely to do? And then obviously to anticipate that and to have responses ready should this action or that action or all of the above. And again, that is also clearly recognized by those who are in leadership positions in the Ukrainian military as well. Most important, frankly, is the leadership that President Zelensky of Ukraine will provide in this regard. If he is willing to negotiate, because again, after all, it is his country that is bearing the destructive power of Russia. Yes, they may be holding them off on the front lines, but every single day, Russia is continuing to launch missiles and rockets and drop bombs on various Ukrainian cities, all the way out to the west in Lviv. They're gradually destroying various elements of infrastructure, whether it's the rail, the road, the fuel depots, military industries, and so forth. So again, I think first and foremost, we should take our lead from President Zelensky. And if he and his people are willing to negotiate, then clearly I think it is time that we would certainly collaborate with him on that. Keeping in mind that, of course, Vladimir Putin most wants to negotiate not necessarily about what's happening in Ukraine and with Ukraine. It's about relief from the sanctions on his economy, financial system, inner circle, and the toll it's taking on the business community. And at some point, he has to realize that the sheer damage that he's doing to Russia, in some ways, very different in nature from the wanton destruction that they're carrying out and the war crimes they're literally committing on a daily basis in Ukraine, but nonetheless, irreversible, irreparable damage in certain sectors in Russia. Let's keep in mind, by the way, that the war in Ukraine is going to probably take 30% or more of the world's wheat exports, just the exports, off the market. Ukraine is the breadbasket for much of North Africa and a variety of other countries that import huge amounts of grains from Ukraine and also from Russia and generally through the Black Sea. But Ukrainian ports are blockaded essentially right now, even if they could conduct the harvest and get that to the ports of exit. So again, the world economy is going to continue to feel the reverberations and the second and third order effects of what's taking place in Ukraine and what's being done by Russia in these different areas. That is literally going to increase hunger in the world at a time when the harvests of the world in many different countries have not been what they had been hoped to be. There are credible reports of saboteurs, of spies, and so forth, of special operators who have been in Kyiv and have indeed, it seems, tried to target President Zelensky at the least. So again, you can never take anything off the table. I think when it comes to Vladimir Putin, you have to be concerned about a number of conceivable possibilities. I tend to think that President Zelensky's operational security and physical security continue to be pretty impressive. But that said, there are plenty of opportunities again for individuals to infiltrate that society and try to provide the real-time information that might enable a decapitation strike. But again, not something I don't think that is very high in likelihood.
How would this change everything?
It always depends. And here it depends on who would step up. Who is the next in line? Could anybody possibly be as inspirational, charismatic, thoughtful, pragmatic, impressive, Churchillian as President Zelensky has been? I think it would be an incredibly hard act. Is there someone else who could do that? I don't know, and I'm not sure who knows what as always, the ramifications of something like that would be. But that's why, in fact, there has been much reported concern about his security, safety, and well-being, and why reportedly the operational security has been very, very significant and impressive. Obviously, the rattling of the nuclear saber, if you will, the sword by Russia has, I think, legitimately raised concerns. It is something that is a particularly serious concern, obviously, around the issue of Ukraine. I know that the United States leadership takes it seriously. Again, I think it is a very low risk in terms of happening, very high risk if it does happen.